ঠিক আছে, নম্রতা দেখা যাচ্ছে। এটা যদি ওই স্লাইড শোতে দিই দাও তাহলে পাশের জিনিসগুলো চলে যাবে, স্লাইড শোতে দিলে পুরো স্ক্রিনটাই হবে।
স্ক্রিন শেয়ারিং হচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হচ্ছে।
এবার রেকর্ডিংটা কি স্টার্ট করে দেবে? 4টা বেজে গেছে, কি একটু পরে করবে?
ম্যাম স্টার্ট করে দেবো?
সবাই জয়েন করেছেন কি? মানে
43 মতো জয়েন করেছেন দেখতে পাচ্ছি। আর আমাদের স্যার ওম প্রকাশ স্যার জয়েন করেননি তো এখনো।
তাহলে কি করে আপনি জয়েন করুন।
স্যার
স্যার একবার একটু ভিডিওটা একবার অন করে নিন, একবার আমরা একটু চেক করে নিই।
স্যার একবার আপনার স্পিকার আর ভিডিওটা একবার চেক করুন।
হ্যাঁ স্পিকার ঠিক আছে, আর ভিডিওটাও তুমি এখানে বসো।
হ্যাঁ ভিডিও ঠিক আছে, ঠিক করুন।
না, একটু ল্যাপটপটা নামাতে হবে নিচের দিকে বা কাছে নিতে হবে।
ক্যামেরাটা
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, না আরেকটু
এটা নেমে যায় বলে উঠেও যায়। ঠিক আছে আন্টি,
একটু আপনার হাতটা একটু সরান।
হ্যাঁ
দেখি একটু নিচে করুন, মুখটা আসছে না পুরোটা। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ,
আবার উঠে যাবে।
আসছে না, মুখটা আসছে না, এক জায়গায় করুন।
এটা একটু প্রবলেম আছে।
গুড আফটারনুন স্যার।
এবার দেখতে পাচ্ছ?
হ্যাঁ এবার দেখো মুখটা একটু, ক্যামেরাটা একটু ডাউন করুন। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ ব্যাস, এইটা একদম ঠিক আছে, এই পজিশনটা একদম ঠিক।
গুড
Okay,
আফটারনুন
let's start the program. Sir has also joined.
গুড আফটারনুন স্যার। ওম প্রকাশ স্যার জয়েন করেছেন?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, জয়েন করে গেছে।
জয়েন করে।
So ma'am, shall we start?
Yes.
দাঁড়া স্টার্ট হচ্ছে রেকর্ডিংটা। হ্যাঁ
রেকর্ডিংটা স্টার্ট হয়েছে?
হ্যাঁ
Okay. Before I will start, I request you all please mute your microphone, and whatever question you people have, please send it into the chat box with name and designation, either in Google platform or in YouTube link. A very good afternoon to all. On behalf of our institution, South Calcutta Girls College and Department of Political Science, myself, Namrata Kothari, welcome all the dignitaries, my friends, my colleagues, and my dear friends. Our topic of discussion today is forced migration in international relations. So, before we will start formally, I just introduce the theme. The forced migration, it refers to the movement of refugees and internally displaced people, as well as the people displaced by natural or environmental disasters, nuclear disaster, famine, or any developmental projects. As a discipline, it has traditionally actually focused on question of stability and war in international system. However, there are many ways the international migration intersects directly with IR. Even traditionally defined, this has driven a growing body of scholarship. The migration is itself a function of international system of state. Without state, there are no borders to cross, and it is the crossing of borders that remains at the heart of the politics of migration. Like who crosses, how, where, and why are the operative issue of the heart of policymaking, debate, and practicing migration. Further, international migration, by its very definition, involves more than one state, calling attention to interstate relations and questions of bilateral and multilateral cooperation. The emergence of key international institutions such as United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, IOM, ILO also brings us questions of institutional power and of the development of international regimes. So it as actually assesses the intellectual history of relationship between IR and forced migration and divides international relations and forced migration into three broad categories. First, it argues that much of the earlier IR work on forced migration dating back to Cold War was primarily empirical and can be considered to be an international history. Second, it claims that since the late 90s, there has been a gradual shift to theorizing the international politics of forced migration, but with a major emphasis on theorizing refugees and international relations. And finally, it describes a new wave that is slowly emerging, which represent a transnational turn. So this phenomena is not a new one. It is present in even ancient time, like when we will see that the Aryan, due to the invasion of Huns, they forced to migrate in Europe, Central Asia, and even in India. Even during the partition of India and Pakistan, we will see this phenomena of forced migration, and even during the partition from India, East Pakistan to India, there is a migration. So this is a global phenomenon. With this brief introduction of the theme, now I would like to request our principal ma'am to deliver her welcome address. Principal ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Namrata. Would you please stop presenting the screen?
Yeah, sure.
Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of South Calcutta Girls College, I would like to welcome you all in this virtual platform. I would like to express my deep sense of gratitude to Professor Dr. Om Prakash Mishra, Professor, Department of International Relations, Jadavpur University, to be with us as the honorable speaker of today's webinar. We are really honored by the presence of such an eminent and renowned personality. Thank you, sir. We are grateful to the Honorable President of our governing body, Sri Subroto Mukherjee, Honorable Minister in charge, Panchayats and Rural Development, for his unconditional support in the journey of our academic excellence. I would like to thank Dr. Shivaranjan Chatterjee, Honorable Member, Governing Body of our college, for his kind consent to deliver the keynote address. My sincere thanks to Professor Moitri Bhattacharya, honorable member of our governing body to be with us. I would like to congratulate all the faculty members of the Department of Political Science, especially the head of the department, Dr. Namrata Kothari, for arranging this program in such a short span. In my welcome address, I would like to introduce our college to the dignitaries, all the participants from different institutions. Our college is the third oldest girls' college of West Bengal, established in 1932, with the motto Sa Vidya Ya Vimuktai. The college focuses on the quality education with the vision and mission of all-round development of the students. We are committed not only to the excellence of teaching learning, but also to the extension activities and community involvement. We believe in the training of the young minds to think beyond the curriculum by arranging various student activities, which include student seminar, poster presentation, PowerPoint presentation, quiz, extempore, photography exhibition and competition, empathy building through the interaction between the helper and helpee, etc. We are proud to have huge responses in the intra and inter-college competitions arranged online during this pandemic also. We are confident and hopeful to overcome the current critical conditions by providing online classes for academic improvement and by ensuring the online yoga session and psychological counseling session regularly for our students for their overall development, crossing the barrier of physical distancing. I think it's our duty to provide this platform to our students to keep them healthy mentally and physically. Today's program is one of the initiatives taken by the Internal Quality Assurance Cell of South to ensure the inclusiveness through different approaches. Hope all of us would be able to be enriched by today's lecture on post-migration in international relations, which is one of the most contemporary and emerging global issues. We expect that this will be a successful event. Please stay safe and protected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your valuable words. You always inspired us to do good work, and without your help in such a short span of time, it's not possible for us to arrange this webinar. Uh, so now I would like to request Dr. Sibranjan Chatterjee, sir, governing body, nominee government of West Bengal, to deliver his keynote address. Over to you, sir. স্যার আপনার ক্যামেরাটা একটু নিচের দিকে করুন, আপনার মুখটা দেখা যাচ্ছে না। হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, ব্যাস ব্যাস ব্যাস, এটা ঠিক, একটু আরেকটু নিচে উপরে উঠে, হ্যাঁ ব্যাস, এইটা ঠিক আছে, ঠিক আছে।
এটা উঠে যায়, নেমে যায়।
ব্যাস 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 ব্যাস, হয়নি হয়নি, একটু ওপরে, একটু ওপরে, হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, ব্যাস ব্যাস ব্যাস, একটু দেখা যাচ্ছে।
আবার বন্ধ ঠিক করতে হবে, বুঝলি?
ব্যাস 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 এটা একদম ঠিক আছে। আবার সরে গেছে। ব্যাস 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 ইটস ওকে, ইটস ফাইন।
গুড আফটারনুন।
স্যার আবার দেখা যাচ্ছে না।
না, আবার এটা উঠে যায় ম্যাডাম, এটা একটু প্রবলেম আছে ক্যামেরাতে।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে ঠিক
ঠিক
আছে।
আছে, স্যারকে বলতে দাও। হ্যাঁ,
Good afternoon, respected Principal Madam, Professor Moitrey Bhattacharya, Honorable Member of the Governing Body, all faculties of the college present here, and also others who have today attended the seminar. You have already known the name of the speaker, very well-known person, Dr. Om Prakash Mishra. He is an authority on international relations, not only in our province, but throughout the whole of India. He was also Pro-Vice Chancellor Indira Gandhi National Open University, sometime past. I know him for more than 30 years. He is my very close associate, and then a very pertinent feature of his personality, which is lacking in most intellectuals of West Bengal in our province, particularly intellectuals associated with the university, is lacking. That is his consistency. His consistency in socio-political thinking and his commitment to ideology. So, as he is my younger brother, I have special love for him. He is a scholar. I have a regard for him. On this present topic, I have a very little knowledge, excepting that of a common man. But what I understand as a common man, when the people leave their own home and go to some other land, permanently or semi-permanently, they don't do so out of their own willingness. They are under compulsion to leave their homeland. So this is forced migration. In a very little case, migration is willingly done. It is under compulsion or forced migration. For instance, the partition of Bengal, partition of Punjab. In Bengal, lakhs and lakhs of people were forced to leave their motherland, including my forefathers. And that had a great impact on Bengal economy, on social equilibrium of Bengal. And these people, popularly known as refugees, had to struggle very hard for existence. Ultimately, most of them have become successful in life. I shall not prolong my discussion. We are very much eager to listen to Om Prakash and learn from Om Prakash his scholarship regarding this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your encouraging words, and whatever you said about the speaker is very true. Now, I would like to request Professor Bhattacharya Madam, Governing Body Nominee, University of Calcutta, to address this august audience with her expertise. Madam, over to you. Moitridi?
Good afternoon,
Yeah.
everybody. Principal Dr. Aparna De, our Honorable GB Member Dr. Shivaranjan Chattopadhyay, our Honorable Speaker, our friend and colleagues, our faculty members. Today it's a great pleasure that South Calcutta Girls College has arranged this webinar on this topic in this pandemic. It's a great endeavor on the part of the college, and must be thankful to the Department of Political Science. The topic, forced migration in international relations, is one of the most significant phenomena in the world politics. We know that forced migration or displacement has caused many millions of people who had to leave their homeland and had no choice. It may be caused by environmental disaster or famine or violence or persecution and conflict, whatever may be. It is a burning issue in the world politics. In our country, that is in India also, earlier Dr. Chattopadhyay has mentioned, and we know that the migration problem is very much acute in India. The migrants are coming from Syria, Afghanistan, Somalia, Myanmar, and now the Rohingya issue is a very significant topic or phenomenon in Indian national politics. In this context, I would like to mention one word, that is the Citizenship Act, amendment of Citizenship Act in 2019, that is CAA and NRC. This act has created many disputes in our country, and protests are coming from different part of our country. I won't waste my time because we are eagerly waiting to listen to the speech would be delivered by our honorable speaker, Dr. Om Prakash Mishra, who is a distinguished personality and renowned scholar in this field. So, thank you, all of you. Thank you, Namrata.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Both our GB members, actually, they have set the floor for today's discussions of our webinar. Now, without delaying much, it will be my pleasure to introduce Dr. Om Prakash Mishra sir, though he doesn't need any introduction, but still this is a formality. So formally, I am introducing him before you all. Professor Om Prakash Mishra teaches at Jadavpur University, where he had been the head of the Department of International Relations and Dean of Arts. He was also founder coordinator of the Center for Refugee Studies. In August 2004, Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh invited him to serve the National Security Advisory Board. In November 2005, the University Grants Commission invited him to chair an expert committee on universities and public policies. He has served as Pro VC in Indira Gandhi National Open University from 2007 to 2010. He has served as the Executive Council of the Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies and Board of Governors of MDI Gurgaon. He is an alumnus of the International Visitors Leadership Program of the Government of United States and was a visiting fellow at the University of Oxford. He has lectured extensively in India and abroad on issues and themes related to Indian foreign policy and national security, political economy, United Nations, human rights, and forced migration. So, without any further delay, I request Sir to enlighten us with his thoughts on the topic. Sir, over to you, sir. Sir Om Prakash, sir, are you there?
I am audible.
Yeah, you are audible.
Thank you. Principal Madam, I have got a cue after listening to you that in 2032, that is another 11 years, you and your successor, they must remember to invite me and Dr. Shivaranjan Chatterjee. And if we are still around, college would be celebrating 100 years, and if we are still around, and then we will have a discussion. And
Of course, sir.
right?
Of course,
So,
we are hopeful also. You have been part of our South Calcutta Girls College family, extended family.
I'm basically, ensuring some insurance that I would be hell and hearty in next 11 years also, and I wish the same for my very good friend Dada Shivranjan Da. I'm so happy that Professor Dr. Moitri Bhattacharya, in very few words, he has brought out the essential of what we should be discussing. And so therefore, in fact, once he started speaking, then I thought I usually don't prepare myself in a formal way. I started thinking of a pen and paper so that I can organize my thoughts. In any case, hers was a very brief speech, and so was Shivranjan Das. Well, I suppose we can all begin. And thank you, Principal and Dr. Namrata Kothari, the HOD, and two of my former students, and they are very distinguished faculty here, Mohor and Shatabdi. They have been very close to us here at the Department of International Relations. So, very glad to see you all. In fact, Namrata, I thought that this is more of a class, but now I see that this is a webinar, and I could see that many of those who are participating, they are faculty members, not only from the political science department, from different departments of the college, and maybe some of them they are from outside. Nonetheless, it's a very, as Dr. Moitri Bhattacharya pointed out, it's very topical, and it's something that we have to consider. And this is a topic which is not confined in relationship to a particular discipline, or for that matter, in relationship to any particular period of time in history, or not necessarily referring to only a set of countries or otherwise. So thank you for organizing this, and let us all begin. Long time back, I used to have a poster in my office, and this poster was given to me by the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. This poster said that, and this is a Germany railway station, in some German town railway station. There is a graffiti, it's written, refugees go back. Refugees go back. And the UNHCR puts a question. They would, if they could. Refugees never would stay in a country or a place if they can help it. Nobody wants to be a refugee. Nobody wants to be a refugee, and therefore, when we say that the refugee must not stay, then possibly we forget the circumstances of their forced departure from their home, their locality, their loved ones, and so on. That is why the UNHCR says the refugees will not stay here if they can help it. If they can go, they will definitely go back to their country. Let me come up with yet some other examples. Long time back, once I was in Chittagong in Bangladesh, and then we were chatting on the roadside. It's a beautiful city, Chattogram, and then we met up with an old lady. She was begging, and we started speaking to her. She could follow Bangla, and then it turns out that she is a Rohingya, and she actually is expected to be in the refugee camp set up by Bangladesh in Cox's Bazar. I'm talking of a period about 24, 25 years back. Right now, the Rohingya influx in Bangladesh, that is, you may say, in the last 30 years, this is the third big wave of influx. And we are talking of, I'm possibly talking of the first wave when this old lady may have come. So she was entitled to be in the refugee camp where there are enough facilities. But she has chosen not to be in the refugee camp, but she is out in Cox's Bazar and nearby areas and she is begging. Why it is so? It is so because once he is in the refugee camp, once he actually gets the benefit of the refugee camp or the facility, supported by UN High Commissioner for Refugees, government of Bangladesh, so all that is fine. But this lady, as well as others, they would also be prepared by Bangladesh and the UN High Commissioner for Refugee to opt for or to go for repatriation to Myanmar. Now, this lady knows that the situation in Myanmar is not stable. Situation is not going to be stable. And nonetheless, if she goes back to Myanmar, her life is going to be endangered. So therefore, she would not like to be in the refugee camp because people in the refugee camp, even with all the facilities that they may have, they are eventually going to be persuaded or pressurized to go back to Myanmar. So in the first example, we see that the refugees are no longer gaining sympathy of people. In the second example, we see that the refugees, they fail, that all the refugee, so all the solution to the refugee problem is to send back the refugees to their home country, and many a time that might be dangerous. So repatriation, which apparently might sound to be very great, repatriation might actually be most life-threatening. Let me come up with an example, yet again involving me. Once I went to Canada, and there I was allowed to witness the refugee status determination procedure being carried out by designated uh, judges. And on that particular day, there was an Iranian lady. She was covered in burqa, and she was given a translator by the Canadian government. She is seeking asylum in Canada because she fears that once she is sent back to Iran, her life is going to be endangered. So whatever I could gather from the proceeding is that this lady is a school teacher in one of the towns of Iran, and she used to every Thursday, possibly every Thursday, once a week, basically, she used to travel to the nearby park where she would take along with her some biscuits, some snacks, and some tea, coffee for a group of people who would gather in the park at a fixed point of time. And then the police, Iranian police, raided this lady, and she was apprehended. And somehow or the other, she has now managed to flee to Canada. Now, the charge against her in Iran is that she was helping the communists because she was giving them support. Now, this lady, she says that she doesn't know about politics, but then she was helping because these people, they were friends of her brother. Now she has come to Canada and she is seeking asylum just because she says that she is facing persecution. That is not enough in Canada. Canadian judges are going to go through each and every aspect of her case, overall situation in Iran, and what will happen to this lady if she is sent back to Iran, and so on. Later on, I came to know that this lady actually got the refugee status in Iran. So here, in Canada. So here, Canada is progressive, and then they have a system, and then they have been able to do so. But then, in all these cases, in the case of Myanmar or the case of, say, uh, Iran, states are the actors. What about a young uh, girl from Sri Lanka, young lady from Sri Lanka, from the Tamil areas, and she is seeking asylum abroad, say in America or Australia, and her contention is not against the Sri Lankan government. She says that I live in an area dominated by the LTTE, and LTTE is pressurizing me to join their rank because I am a Sri Lankan Tamil. But under international law, LTTE is not a state. And so therefore, whether it can be said that this young lady is being persecuted by a state. So here the persecution is by a non-state actor, that is LTTE. But a non-state actor which has got a huge swath of territory under their control and who are fighting a very bitter war against Sri Lankan government. So again, in this example, we see that the refugee definition has to be very broad-based, because it is not only that the state might be the villain, as in most cases, but it is the non-state actor that there may be. Now here I will take a pause. The world has not seen a third world war, but that the world is all the time, in a way, preparing for a war. However, a great grand war has not taken place. But at the same time, the number of armed conflicts around the globe has actually increased manifold. So therefore, we do have many different types of situations, with especially with the many of the countries which have have become independent in more recent decades, last 4 or 5 decades in Africa and in Asia, also in Latin America and so on, many established countries, they are also seeing a wide variety of conflict situation. And so therefore, under common article in the Geneva Convention, Red Cross Geneva Convention, you find that the term war is now increasingly not used. Rather, the armed conflict, and the armed conflict can be within the a particular state, or it could be between the state, among the states. And nowadays, the war between the states has come down, but war within a state has actually gone up, and that is why, if there are 20 million refugees in the world today, there are 48 million internally displaced today. So these internal refugees, one may call them internal refugees, in the sense that people have become refugee within their own country. They have not been able to flee away from their country. They are within the borders and the boundaries. Now, for example, the Sri Lankan, Kashmiri Pandits, and I studied the plight of the Kashmiri Pandits in detail in the mid to late 1990s. The Kashmiri Pandits were displaced, but then they did not flee to Pakistan, or they did not go to US. They did not go to England. They went to Jammu. They went to Jaipur. They went to Bangalore. They went to Delhi and such places. So, at that point of time, all these people, they were referred to as the migrants by Government of India. And I am very proud of the fact that I kept on arguing in different forums that the Kashmiri Pandits, they should be considered to be internally displaced person. And so for the last about 20 years, there is a huge momentum in the study of the internally displaced people. In fact, the first book on internally displaced people, fortunately, I was asked to write the India chapter for that book, the first book on internally displaced people. So when we talk of forced migration, we are talking of everyone who has been mentioned in the various examples that I gave. Forced migration involves refugees. It involves those who are displaced within the borders of their own countries, but it also involves the Chakmas in Arunachal Pradesh, who for all practical purposes are stateless. It also involves the Bihari Muslims stranded in Bangladesh for a plane to go to Pakistan. I'll explain that example. It also involves millions of people who have gone to foreign countries, and there they have asked for asylum, and then they are waiting for the time, up to the time that they get the asylum. And this is a very interesting, complex example I am going to give. A person, he attempts to go to Paris. He gets himself into a flight. He lands in Paris, and there he declares himself to be an asylum seeker, a person who is seeking asylum. Now the French authorities determine that this person is actually not a refugee. His claim is not genuine. So therefore, French authority, they try to send this person back to the place where he is coming from. So they force him into a plane so that he gets extradited. But under international law, Article 33 of the UN Convention on the Status of Refugees, 1951, this is an international convention. Every asylum seeker has got the protection of Article 33, which talks about the principle of non-refoulement. any person who has landed in your country, who is now in your territory, you cannot force that person out without hearing him or her, without giving them a chance to present themselves in how they are refugee. So you have to give them the chance. But you know what the French authorities are doing? The plane has landed in Paris, but then the area where the planes land in Paris airport, they have designated this area to be an international territory, though it is in Paris and France. And so therefore they refuse to accept that the person is on French territory and the rule of non-refoulement applies. So what you find that here the French authorities, they are actually trying to ensure that the potential refugee comers do not come. And now what the French are going to do, that they are going to find out that how come this person got into the plane. He's coming from Kolkata, he's coming from Madagascar, he's coming from Brazil. Who gave him the visa? So the French consulate, they have given him the visa. So all those who were involved in giving the visa to this person, they might be taken to task. And the particular airline that has brought this person, suppose without visa, then that particular airline is going to be fined. And they may actually not be allowed to operate in France. So basically, today's world is a world of passport and visa. Nobody wants the refugees. We are all very happy that the refugees are taken care, but then we ourselves, we are not interested in helping the refugees at all. This actually happened in Bengal also. When in the late 1940s and 1950s, people from the then East Pakistan, they started coming to Kolkata. These refugees, they did not get a ready welcome. They did not get a ready welcome. In fact, they had to struggle. And that is how and why many of the areas around Jadavpur, you will find that these are all called Garh, Tuktigarh and so on. Why? There are some questions, but then I cannot read them. So later on, after I shall be responding to that. Anyways, so
there will be a question answer session, sir. So after
yeah, that is right. Tell me what time? That is পরে তো দেরি আছে তো এখন
না আপনি lecture complete করুন then.
I'm glad to take questions. Well, there is a compassion fatigue. Countries are not interested to keep on giving money to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. And the UN High Commissioner for Refugees is supposed to look after the refugees. But how long? For how many years? If the country concerned where from the refugees have come, if they are not interested to take back the refugees, what would you do? This has happened with the Lot Sampas of Bhutan, of southern Bhutan, and then they are Nepali speaking people in South Bhutan in the 1980s, mid 80s, late 80s. Many of them, they were virtually driven out of Bhutan, and they had to go to Nepal, where they speak the Nepali language. Nepal government will not accept them. Nepal government insists that they are Bhutanese, and Bhutan must take care of them. And then you have a very problematic situation of thousands of Lot Sampas, southern Bhutanese, who speak Nepali, and they actually have to live in the camps. And then finally, of course, Bhutan says that na amader to lokhi na, amra to chini na. Because when these people were allowed out or forced out, their documentation were taken away. So these people, they do not have any way to prove that they are from Bhutan. So this type of situation may arise. Or you might have a situation, say like that of the Chakmas of Arunachal Pradesh. Kindly don't confuse. There are Indian Chakmas in Tripura, there are Indian Chakmas in Mizoram, and there are, well, for all practical purposes, Chakmas in Arunachal Pradesh who have got every right to get Indian citizenship, but then they are being denied so. Way back in 1963, because of the construction of a dam on Kaptai Dam, these people, mostly Buddhists from the Chittagong Hill Tract area, they came over to Assam very quickly because of our very problematic relations with China at that point of time. Government of India thought that now we will place them in Northeastern Frontier Agency, NEFA. Now NEFA is not there. Now later on this NEFA becomes Arunachal, and then later again in 1987 Arunachal Pradesh is a state, and it is one of the big states, but the population is very small. Population is very small, and Arunachal Pradesh there are 22 tribes, and these 22 tribes they compete among themselves for political power. Now the people from Bangladesh, the Chakmas, as per Indira Mujib Pact, they are all supposed to get Indian citizenship. And Indian courts have said that they are Indian citizens and so on. But the numbers of the Chakmas has grown up, and their number is numerically they are much bigger than most of the Chakma tribal groups. And none of the tribal groups they are ready to accept the Chakmas as Indian citizens. Once Indian citizens, then they will be voting, and once they will be voting, then they will have a control over power. And so therefore, despite Indian Supreme Court, despite Indian Parliament, nothing is actually happening. This is a situation that the people, nobody likes refugees. I'll give you a very interesting situation of the people in Geneva camp. Now, of course, the situation has changed. This Geneva camp is in Dhaka, one of the most horrible places that I have visited. I visited there twice. It at that point of time, it actually had people who were Bihari Muslims. And it is said that the Urdu speaking Bihari Muslims, they fought alongside the Pakistanis during the Mukti Juddho. And Mukti Juddho, of course, was a sentiment based on, apart from the political autonomy and political independence, sentiment based on language. And Bengali speaking, whether Hindus or Muslims, they fought this battle against those who were, Urdu speaking at that point of time. Many of them, not necessarily all of them. Now, after the Bangladesh was established, what you find that these people say that we are from Pakistan. We don't recognize Bangladesh. We will go to Pakistan. So they started going to Pakistan, and Pakistan sent plane for them. And these people, as you know, that Bangladesh and Pakistan do not have boundary. So these people actually went to Pakistan. It is what they are called stranded Pakistanis. That basically means that they have gone to the bus stop or to the airport to catch a plane to Pakistan, and then Pakistan has been sending planes, Saudi Arabia is helping, and then Pakistan stops to send planes because these people are going to add to the overall population of Muhajirs in Pakistan. And the Punjabis in Pakistan, they would not like, Punjabi Muslims, they would not like the number of additional numbers in the Muhajir ranks. So therefore, these people were neither here nor there. They would not take Bangladesh citizenship. And in the beginning, they were not very welcome also. And they are supposed to be citizens of Pakistan, but then they do not stay in Pakistan. They stay in a country called Bangladesh now. So therefore, it is stranded. So this is again another example of people who are forced migrants. Or the forced migrant category did not necessarily have people actually to move. You see that people are stationed and then they become stateless. So both these categories of people are stateless. Soviet Union, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and then It disintegrates. Instead of one, now you have got 15 republics. And each of the republics have got minorities. And each of these republics, they are now coming up with new laws which will require the local language proficiency to be essential. And as a result of which, in most of the countries, the Russians minorities are suffering. And Russia being the big power that it is, actually interfering in these countries, and some of these interference actually have actually involved war. So again, you find many different types of situations where this becomes a possibility. So today's world, you have say 20 million refugees. You have, of course, also the Palestinian refugees, another about 4 to 5 million. You have asylum seekers, but more importantly, you have got 48 million internally displaced people. And why these internally displaced people? Why this category is important? Because for the refugees, we do have an international system of protection. And this came about after the First World War because state boundaries, they were reorganized. And once they were reorganized, it became a necessity to take care of the people who have been left out. And so therefore, under the League of Nations, some form of a refugee commissioner was established. But then this problem actually got compounded after the Second World War. And that is why there were many efforts which were made. And finally, you have the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. But then interestingly, it was thought that this problem is going to be solved very soon. And that is why it was hoped that the UN High Commissioner for Refugees is going to be there for maybe 3 years or 5 years or something like that. And UN High Commissioner, in fact, is very much there even today after 70 years. And in fact, it has much more problem, much more on its plate than it ever had. So that basically means that the problems related to forced migration of people is going up. Forced migration or forced displacement, or you can call it involuntary migration, or you may even call it man-made disaster. Just see, I have used 4 words. If we can broadly categorize disasters into nature-made and man-made. Nature-made disasters are earthquake or volcano eruption or the rise in the sea level. So these are nature-made disasters which can displace people, right? But then you can have man-made disasters. And what are the man-made disasters? If you construct an industrial park and displace people, or if you construct a dam and if you displace people, or if you go to war, or if you are trying to kill your neighbor, so these are all man-made disasters. So nature-made disaster, that is also going to give rise to forced migrant. But then the nature of that forced migrant is different from the man-made disaster. So we cannot help much if it is a nature-made disaster. But then we have got added responsibility to do something and ameliorate the suffering if people are displaced because of man-made disasters. So whether it is in terms of a dam or an industrial park or because of war or internal conflict, guerrilla warfare and so on. So when we are talking of forced migration, mostly we are talking of the forced migration related to man-made disasters. And cooperation at every level is required, whether to sort out the ill effects of the nature-made disaster or the man-made disaster. But then the man-made disasters are actually often, they are a part of policy, they are part of politics. Or in certain cases, political economy. You have so many different types of internal conflicts, ethnic conflict. People are killed just because they belong to one ethnic group or the other. And there is a question of political dividend. I'll give you an example. In the 1990s, Bodoland Autonomous Council area was demarcated. And then it was also said that all those villages which have Bodo population in majority, that will come under the Bodoland Autonomous Council. What happened? You find that the Adivashis, they have been displaced from many of the areas, Bodo dominated areas. Because if you have to determine majority one way or the other, then actually this type of situation arises. You will find not now, earlier, in many cream of Meghalaya society being forced out, and you will have actually newspaper advertisements by Bengalis or even by Marwaris or other people other than the Garos and indigenous people there. What does that have? So basically, distress sale of property. People, they have to sell their property and get out because their neighbors are not all that very enthusiastic about their stay. And in this type of situation, though you are in the same country, you sell your property and you get out. And then you don't get the price for your property because prices have to be brought down further. This actually happened in Meghalaya in the earlier period. And then you have ethnic conflict, let's say, for example, and then we had some very ugly manifestation of this in the 1990s between the Nagas and the Kukis in the Manipur Hill areas, Manipur Hill districts. So you had people being displaced from a Kuki-dominated village into a Naga-dominated block. And then that block might be in a district which is again Kuki-dominated. So you have multiple types of relocation, forced relocation of people because of ethnic animosity and so on. We can keep on adding to the examples from around the world. Now there is a very big relief for the people, after all, in Colombia, a country in the American continent. Unbelievable, but the fact is that the people have actually been born and they have actually also died after living for 50 years or 60 years in the camps because of the infighting struggle in Colombia for almost 60, 70 years. So all the aspects and issues related to forced migration is actually most problematic. And it is not possible to address the issues only with regard to compassion, because after all there are countries which are shouldering a whole lot of responsibility. India has shouldered the responsibility of the Tibetans, and it is said that the Indian treatment of the Tibetans refugees is one of the best in the world. That is a fact. But then same India is now refusing to acknowledge the Rohingyas as refugees. And Bangladesh is now having about 11 lakh Rohingyas. But then the Rohingyas are minorities in Myanmar. They have been tormented. And then they have to get out. And most of them, they have actually went to Bangladesh because it is close to them. Some of them, they have actually traveled to yet other countries. And can you believe it? There was a movie, I suppose, starred by not Amitabh Bachchan. What is the name of Amitabh Bachchan's son, who is also an actor?
Abhishek Bachchan. Abhishek Bachchan.
Abhishek Bachchan. Abhishek Bachchan starred in a movie. Some of you might have actually watched it. It's called uh, Refugee. So what the the storyline is actually about not not people from Bangladesh coming to India as refugee. No, it is not. It is actually about people from Bangladesh traversing through the Indian territory in an attempt to go over to Pakistan. So naturally, that must have involved the stranded Biharis, which is the country which has got the highest number of refugees on its soil. I am sure that whatsoever is the number, none of you will be able to answer. Which is the country which actually shoulders the largest number of refugees in the world? And I can bet that nobody can answer this question. You can take a try. Namrata?
Sir, no idea, sir. আপনি বলুন, sir.
না আর এইটার উত্তরের মধ্যে এইটার
স্যার ইন্ডিয়া হবে
হ্যাঁ
ইন্ডিয়া ইন্ডিয়া
নো ডক্টর হালদার দিস ইজ নট এনিওয়ান ইয়েস Mauri Majumdar, you want to say something? It is Pakistan. It is Pakistan. Got it? Now, you see, very interesting why none of you, and all of you, of course, were very highly educated people here, none of you could answer this question is because of certain biases that we have. That we do not want to understand, we want to understand the world only through the prism. We want prism of what we are being led to believe. Pakistan has been hosting millions of Afghan refugees. And that has a huge impact on Pakistan polity, economy, and so on. Anyway, the Afghan refugees are very large also in Iran. We have some Afghan refugees. They are recognized only in Delhi, Afghan urban refugees. India has hosted Tibetan refugees. India has hosted almost 10 million people from the then East Pakistan here in India. We have hosted them. About 9 million people, of course, they went back, but about 1 billion people stayed back here. I'm talking of the refugees, those who are recognized as such. And that is how and why we have, irrespective of the government, whether the Jyoti Basu's government or Mamata Banerjee government, you have a refugee rehabilitation and so on. Because of the refugee at one point of time, those who had come. We have hosted the Chakma refugees in 1963. We have also hosted the Chakma refugees from CST area in Tripura in the 1980s. And they were accepted to be refugees by government of India. And they were in 6 camps in Tripura. But as soon as Hasina government came to power, government of India and Sheikh Hasina government, they entered into an agreement by which these Chakmas, they were repatriated. These Chakmas were repatriated to Bangladesh. They possibly did not want to do that. The people did not want to do that. And then I'm going to tell you something which you will feel very uncomfortable, but let me tell you. When the Chakmas, and we don't confuse these Chakmas with the Arunachal Pradesh Chakmas, or with the Indian Chakmas in Tripura or Indian Chakmas in Mizoram. So when the Chakma refugees in Tripura, in the camp, they were not allowed to get out of the camp, because if they get out, then naturally the unskilled market is going to come down. You will not have almost any rate, even for the say for a rickshaw puller, because market is going to get replaced with so many unemployed people. So government of India was looking after them. But when government of India tried to persuade them to go back to Bangladesh, to CST area, and they would not leave, then you know what happened? Then their ration was cut down. 1 week maybe there is no salt, and we are talking of thousands of people, or pulses were not there, or the rice supply got dwindled. So that way, these refugees got persuaded to go back, repatriated. So these days, there are three solutions to refugee problem. One is local integration. There are people who come slowly, steadily. There is a social acceptance for them, and then they get integrated over a period of time. They get citizenship. So local integration is the best solution. But then many a times what happens, that people themselves would like to go back because of the war that came about, and they had to flee. Now the war has receded, or for that matter, my side has won the battle, so we go back to our country. It can happen. But mostly repatriation takes place not voluntary but involuntary. Like the example that I gave you, that the Bangladesh would try to persuade the Rohingyas to go back, or the Indian government persuaded the Chakma refugees to go back. So repatriation is mostly involuntary. But then there is another method of solution, and that is rehabilitation and resettlement. And resettlement, of course, is a very lucrative proposition, in the sense that many of the countries, especially countries which have a good forward-looking refugee policy, or those who are progressive, and their people are tolerant, and there is some form of democracy, you find that these countries are ready to release an annual quota of how many refugees they are ready to take in their countries. And I'm very glad to tell you that almost the entire Lotsampas in Nepal, they have been absorbed by countries like America. Because Bhutan would not take them back. Nepal cannot afford to keep them indefinitely. And UN High Commissioner for Refugees and other organizations, they do not have sufficient money to continue to feed these people. Ultimately, resettlement in America. So whether it's Canada or Australia or Germany or smaller Scandinavian countries, they are ready to come up with annual quota. Now this annual quota is actually coming down. And now these countries have become very specific about what the type of refugees that they want. They want maybe, they would like people who have got good degrees, those who can contribute. They want educated people, and so on. And then they want people who are of a young age, like that. So therefore, this itself has become quite problematic also about the resettlement. So whether it is resettlement or repatriation or local integration, but one way or the other, the problem actually remains. There are problems related to local integration or multiculturalism in the society that one can discuss at length. Now, I was supposed to be talking for some more time, but then what generally happens is that I always find that the questions are interesting, and then while answering the questions, maybe it is possible for me also to throw further light. I am ready to discuss the CAA, which is relevant here in our discussion. We are going to discuss the CAA, NRC, also the current situation in Syria, and so on. Let me have a quick look about the type of questions that there are, and then let there be some discussion to begin with, and 3 to 4 minutes, and then I come back. But in between, I shall, of course, be listening.
Uh,
Namrata?
thank you very much, sir, for your enlightened lecture. And
No, I have not finished. I mean that I will.
no, because with the help of anecdote, both in the practical life and from the cine world, you have explained this global phenomena in such a lucid way, which is a determining factor for you of any country, economic, political, and social developments. It's really great, and I am also thankful to you. Though you are not well, still you have kept the same charm of your lecture. So I'm very thankful for that. Now the floor is open for question answer session, and Dr. Shatabdi Das will conduct this session. And one thing, feedback link will be provided in the chat box. All of you fill it up. Now over to you, Shatabdi.
Thank you, Namrata. Thank you, sir, for such an enlightening discussion on a very significant issue of international relation. And a wide variety of issues are already discussed at length. There are certain questions from some students of us. One by one, I'm telling this question. First,
Please tell me all the questions. I'm taking notes.
Okay, sir. Thank you. The first, it is coming from Sneholata Singh, 6th semester, South Calcutta Girls College. Actually, sir, you already mentioned that you are going to cover the CAA issues. She posed a question that right now in our country is amidst a pandemic situation, and somewhere the NRC issue has been getting neglected. In this context, she wants to know your opinion. Basically, do we really need to implement NRC in our country? And if it is at all implemented, then the status of the people who fail to show records of legal citizenship, and do the state will consider their when and how their citizenship will be discarded, and so on. And another question comes, basically 4 questions come from Aratrika Majumdar. She is from 2nd semester, South Calcutta Girls College, Department of Political Science. Neholata was also from Political Science Department. She asked first, it's a very rudimentary questions. What currently is the status of refugees or migrant in the international political system? Number 1. Number 2, do migrants lose their citizenship of their native country? And number 3, what measures the government of the country to which these migrants move to take to provide them protection, which you have already discussed about Canada, Australia, the Lutsampas, they are kept in America, resettlement issues you have already mentioned. But if you throw some more light on that, then it will be very helpful for them as well. And the 4th question that came from her, that is, how can the internal displacement be carved down, and what the government can do to stop this internal migration? So he posed a question on internal displacement, and adding to this question, sir, it is from my part, if you throw some light on the current migrant labor issue, they are also forced to migrate, and the reverse migration issue, if you can throw some light on that, then it will be very helpful for me as well. And another question is from Nomita Odhikari, 6th semester, Political Science Department of South Calcutta Girls College. ও বাংলায় কোয়েশ্চেনটি করেছে, আমি বাংলাতেই বলছি। বর্তমানে ইউরোপীয় অভিবাসন সংকটের কথা শোনা যাচ্ছে। সিরিয়া, আফগানিস্তান সংলগ্ন অঞ্চলে যুদ্ধরত অবস্থার কারণে সেখানকার নাগরিকদের নিজেদের দেশ বাসস্থান ছেড়ে অন্য দেশে আশ্রয়ের জন্য চলে যেতে হচ্ছে। কেন তাদের এই অভিবাসন করতে হচ্ছে? কেনই বা যুদ্ধ পরিস্থিতি চলছে? ওই দেশের সরকার এই যুদ্ধ পরিস্থিতিতে নাগরিকদের সঠিক আশ্রয়ের দিকে নজর দিচ্ছে না কেন? সরকারের ভূমিকা কোথায়? এটা তার কোয়েশ্চেন। স্যার আমি আরেকটু দেখে নিচ্ছি, একটু কুইক চেক করে নিচ্ছি যে আর এর মধ্যে আর কোনো কোয়েশ্চেন এসছে কিনা। আচ্ছা, এখানে ওই আরাত্রিকা মজুমদার আরেকটি প্রশ্নও করেছেন আমাদের স্টুডেন্টও, হোয়াট হ্যাপেন্স টু দোজ রেফিউজিজ who do not come under the qualifications of the annual quota for refugees? Another question is from Pradipta Mukherjee. He is a colleague of us of political science fraternity. He asked a question that absorbed refugees from Tibet and other countries, but on the other hand did not find 1951 Refugee Convention. Is it a duality? He wants your comment on that. And another question from Niloy Kaur Choudhury. Literature on migration always shows us loss of assets, loss of lives, etc. Is there any positive side of migration? And another question has come from our colleague Ghanteshwar Haldar of Department of History. What is the solution of Rohingya issue? I have got these questions right now.
শতাব্দীদি নিহারেন্দু হালদার
হ্যাঁ আরেকটা এসছে, হ্যাঁ দেখ, Niharendra Haldar, he posed another question. Is there any relation between identity politics and forced migration? These are all. Right, Kamulika? The YouTube live streaming and the in-call messages, both are showing
আর
this
একটা
question.
পাঠাচ্ছি, আমাদের স্টুডেন্ট জবা পাঠিয়েছে, আমি ওটা পাঠাচ্ছি।
Well, quite a handful.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Quite a handful, and in fact, this is a better way to go about it. Also, in the sense that I shall be able to throw light. Let me take up the last question. Niharendu is asking the relationship between identity politics and forced migration. Naturally, if you want to assert your identity, and usually the identities are asserted vis-a-vis yet other identities. If you try to assert your identity in a way which involves a conflict, the resultant situation would be war, and a consequence of the war will be migration, forced migration. So there is a relationship, rather a direct relationship between assertion of identity and forced migration. Now, if you are asserting your identity only in non-political and non-violent ways, then possibly there is not a problem. If you love your language, it is fine. But then if you also love your language in a way that you want to hate other language, then this will have the opposite effect of uniting all those others. And then naturally there is a clash. And that clash can be, if that is violent, and if that actually involves persecution, if that is actually a government policy, or the government is not in a position to control it, then naturally the consequence would be forced migration, whether within the country or whether across the country. And then there are so many examples, especially from Africa and Asia, that I can discuss, but then naturally will not be able to discuss at length. Mr. Niloy Haldar, he is asking two questions. And then the literature on migration. Now, the literature on migration is, of course, very rich. And then nostalgia is, of course, very much part of that literature. And then the loss of one's toil or loss of one's culture, and people are nostalgic, then they would like to go back, then keep on talking about it and so on. Yes, there is literature is so very much rich with all the sentiments, but here there is a difference. You know, we generally tend to confuse the immigrants with the forced migrants. No, those who are immigrants in the sense that they have gone to another country and then they have been able to get get accommodation there, asylum there, in a legitimate way, and then that is your situation of the immigrant. And so the immigrant are, of course, they are also very much part of uh, part of the country that they came from, so they would like to have there. Now, for example, America is a land of immigrants, and immigrants they have their own culture, and then they have their own practices and so on, and the immigrants have come at very different period of time. So multiculturalism can become a strength, and which is a strength for America, but multiculturalism is something that one might become very resentful, and then there might be problems. He has got Mr. Niloy Haldar has got another issue, that is Rohingya solution. Well, the in the 1980s, Burmese government, that time Burma, now it's Myanmar, they said that they came up with a list of people who are indigenous people of Burma, those who are ethnic groups of Burma. And here, very deliberately, they left out the Rohingyas, calling them as Bengalis, and then not being part of, because these people are Bengali speaking. They are from they are not they are Muslims. They are minorities. So Burma once said that Burma is a country of these 136 identity groups, ethnic groups, and Rohingya doesn't find them in. And so therefore there is a problem. And then the Rohingyas, they have also taken up to arms. And then there is a lot of plans that the Rohingyas will be driven out. And whenever the Rohingyas have driven out, they have attempted to come to India. They have mostly gone to Bangladesh. Some of them, they have been able to manage to go to Southeast Asia. So Rohingya crisis is a life crisis, and military-backed government in Myanmar, they are very much uh, very stiff, and then they say that no, no, এটা তো আমাদের লোকই না. These people do not belong to us. So therefore, they are not ready to take them back. And many a time negotiations have led to their repatriation previously. But right now, there is a very big jam. United Nations has tried to caution Myanmar many a times. And many countries, they have adopted sanctions against Myanmar. But Myanmar is not budging. Myanmar has got very good support from China, and so therefore this is a very live problem that we do have, and there is no ready-made solution to the Rohingya problem unless all these, and 11 lakhs are there very much in Bangladesh itself. There is a very huge number. Bangladesh is a Muslim-dominated country. That does not mean that they are ready to absorb all these people. They themselves have their own problems. So therefore, it is a problem in domestic politics of Bangladesh, in domestic politics of India, in domestic politics of Myanmar. It is an international issue. It is an issue that involves the United Nations. It is an issue that has always invariably involved many other countries who have tried to come up with a solution, but no ready solution is there. প্রদীপ্ত কোথায় দেখা যাচ্ছে? প্রদীপ্ত Pradipto has asked a question about duality and in relationship to Indian approach. Yes, very much. It's a very right question, important question. India has not signed the UN Convention on the Status of Refugees. India has always believed that our record is very good and we are not going to sign this convention, and because this convention is going to put a lot of pressure on us, and so therefore case-to-case basis we will consider. So Tibetans, we have been very happy supporting them. Sri Lankan Tamils, very happy supporting them in the 1980s. Chakma from CST, very good in the 1980s. Now the You don't have support for the Chakmas in India anymore. You don't have support for the Sri Lankans, Tamils in India anymore. So, like Americans, India is also sending its big petrol ship into the mid ocean, into the open, so as to ensure that no ship or boat carrying Tamil refugees, Tamil people, they enter Indian coastal waters. America also does the same with the Cubans and so on. So this is very much against human rights, one may say, one may argue, which is correct. But then this is the current Indian government policy. India is not interested to take back to give any shelter to the Rohingyas, which is again also very much unfortunate. And in fact, India is all the time very much in a dilemma as to whether to work along with the Myanmar government. That if we get the Myanmar government support, then it is easier for us to have a control over some of the militant groups who are operating against India, but they are in Myanmar jungles. So this is a duality, of course. Then India has always been very uh, India has always been very supportive of the people from East Pakistan, and then they have been allowed here. But right now there is a controversy related to the uh, National Register of Citizens. As an expert or maybe as a student of forced migration, let me tell you nothing of this sort. And this is, of course, also an answer to some of the questions which has been raised by Sneholata and maybe Orotrika also. That NRC is a non-starter in this country. It is actually against the constitutional norm. It is against international law and the CAA, the amendment to the Citizenship Act that has been carried out here in this country. It is illegal. It is unconstitutional. Nothing of this sort matches with the aspirations and the principles of Indian constitutional democracy. And then refugee definition does not admit of any distinction based on religion. In fact, refugee definition is against any division. And here the CAA is trying to talk in terms of people who came from some of the named countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and whether they are non-Muslims or not, this type of categorization is illegal, and this is why people of India they are fighting against this. And I don't see any future either for the CAA or for the NRC here in this country. NRC was only in regard to Assam because of some of the peculiar problems there. And then, as we know, that what type of a worst possible type of scenario has been played out in Assam. So, therefore, this is the worst form of identity politics that has been unleashed because of the state practices. Here, the government and the state uh, uh, itself is directly involved. And this type of an attempt, wherever they have been carried out, has been always criticized internationally. And this type of a policy is actually very much harmful to the society. If you have the Hindus come over from Bangladesh to India, that basically means that the Muslims are going to be oppressed here. And then it will also mean that the Hindus would get oppressed in Bangladesh because one type of fundamentalism is going to give rise to another set of fundamentalism, and then there is simply no way out of it. And I would also like to mention, and some of you might take note of what I am just going to say, Indians are the biggest minority in the world. Indians are the biggest minority in the world, whether in Nigeria or in Malawi or in America or for that matter England. Indians are also minorities. And then if you do not treat your own minorities in a certain constitutional legal wage, then that basically means that you are going to invite international repudiation of your position. Your overall situation as a constitutional democracy is going to take a dip. Your society is going to become divisive, and all this is going to keep on leading to one problem or the other, and there will be no way that you will be able to answer. You might have seen, and every type of a action always would have certain types of reaction. So what is done here in India or in an Indian prison or Indian law, that will have a repercussion elsewhere, and at some point of time or the other, that is going to affect the Indians. And if the Indians get affected, that is actually going to become a most important of the problems in the entire world, because Indians are one of the biggest minorities in the world. There was a question regarding do migrants lose their কি ছিল এটা অরিত্রিকার কোশ্চেন একটু বলো তো আবার
হ্যাঁ স্যার, এটা ছিল ডু মাইগ্রেন্টস লুজ দেয়ার সিটিজেনশিপ অফ দেয়ার নেটিভ কান্ট্রি?
Yes, you see, you are a migrant. You are a migrant as soon as you have adopted another country's citizenship, or you have been granted citizenship. This grant of citizenship is only at the cost of your own citizenship. So you are a citizen of only one country. Your parent country, they might give you some NRI status, or they might give you some Prabhashi certificate, but then the fact remains that you are going to be the citizens of the country that you have actually gone to, and you have applied for the citizenship. But most people are not, most immigrants, they do not never apply for the citizenship. They very much carry with their Indian citizenship. So that is all very much possible. Just because you have gone somewhere, that doesn't mean that you become the citizen of that country. In fact, you don't, because most of the cases of migration, and most of the cases of the migration is voluntary migration. We are today discussing involuntary migration, forced migration. Voluntary migration, you have gone there as a tourist, you have gone there on behalf of your company, you have gone there on behalf of your country, or you have gone there to study. But that is voluntary migration for the time being, right? So that doesn't take away, that doesn't confer new citizenship, that doesn't take away your citizenship. But now, as you may have seen, that there are many Indians, very rich Indians, who are migrating to foreign lands, and many of them, they have defrauded the banks in India, and many people, moneyed people, they are going to other countries because they do not want to live in India, or they have started one problem or the other, and so therefore they have taken citizenship of other countries, and many a times this citizenship is actually bought. So if you are investing whole lot of money in a different country, that investment might become a qualifying attribute for you in order for you to get your citizenship. Well, there was a question about the annual quota. Annual quota is, of course, depends. In India, we do not have any quota. We do not accept refugees. In India, there is nothing called refugee, by the way. Refugees are only those people who are categorized as such by the government of India. Anybody who comes here in this country, they are all treated under the Foreigners Act 1946. There is only one act. There is no refugee specific legislation. I have no hesitation in pointing out this out, that at one point of time, at the all India level, at the level of government of India, in every respect, me and my colleagues, we had drafted everything that would have been necessary, and had that become a law, all these problems related to CAA, etc., perhaps would not have come about. But the CAA is basically political rhetoric. It has nothing to do with the law. If you want to make a distinction between those who are genuine refugees and those who are not, if for that you have to have a law. In India, there is no law. India, there is no law on the refugees. So if there is no law, then how do you say that someone is a refugee and someone is not a refugee? Right? So everybody who comes here without passport, without a valid visa, they are all foreigners, and then they are going to be treated under the Foreigners Act. নমিতা অধিকারীর কোশ্চেনটা কি উত্তর করলাম? ইউরোপিয়ান, আচ্ছা, the situation in Europe because of the thousands of people who are lining up to go there, especially from Sudan, and Afghanistan is an old problem. Well, these are political issues. People are fighting it out, and the United Nations Security Council is handicapped because of the veto, and then no decisive action can be taken. Syria, the civil war, and the civil war actually involved identity, and it involved question of democracy and question of the president the continuation. It involved the question of the neighboring countries. So neighboring countries got involved, Hezbollah got involved, Turkey got involved, Iran got involved, Jordan got involved, later on Russia got involved, America got involved. And so, though therefore a civil war has become an international war with no end to sight, naturally the consequence is that a huge number of internal displacement and equally a great number of the refugees, but the refugees are not getting any help or support to the extent that they possibly need, because there is always a fear of the refugees. And then I was watching this web series based on Denmark politics, and then everywhere, particularly the Muslim minorities, they have become a subject of suspicion in Europe. Many political parties have sprung up from the far right. They do not want the refugees. They want these refugees to go back. They would like to force them. They would like force them out. European countries have come up with many rules, regulations, which actually makes it most difficult for anybody to actually be able to enter into any of the European countries. And then there is a emphasis now that if you are suffering, that basically means that you must take recourse to the facilities which is very much there in your own country or in your neighboring country. Why do you come all the way to Europe? In between there were countries. If your life itself is at stake, that basically means that you should be finding refuge in a country which is nearby. So instead of, from Mednipur, instead of coming to Kolkata, instead of going to, say, Jharkhand, instead of going to other part of the country, you have, or instead of going to Pakistan or Bangladesh or Nepal or Bhutan, you have straight away gone to Germany. Why should Germany entertain you? By the way, I must also say that Germany is one very progressive country amidst all the crisis, and we must take the good name of the president of Germany, কি নাম? The lady president, যিনি ছিলেন president কিছুদিন আগে, who was the German president?
Merkel.
Yes.
Angela Merkel.
This is the type of statesman that the world possibly needs. Despite huge criticism, despite political challenge, she decided to take a huge number of refugees in their country. And then, of course, she also won the election because people of Germany stood by her. So that type of a leadership, that type of progressive thinking is actually not available at all. Here, so far as our country is concerned, we are not taking any refugees. And in fact, if suppose somebody gets in, then we are interested to hound them out. And there is no way that we will also even be able to say that who is a refugee or not, because many of the people they will come, they are economic migrants. And economic migrants, of course, they will not be given asylum. That will be considered to be undocumented migrants. But then you should also know that no amount of state repression, no amount of walling or barbed wire fence can actually prevent a genuinely needy person from crossing over. This is the law of nature, that you have to pay a price for the relative prosperity. So in the same way that many of you have come back from different parts of West Bengal and so on, here in Kolkata, and some of you might have aspirations to go here and there. So that is in the economic domain. But then there are people who actually have been forced out. And once they have been forced out, then there are so many implications of that. আচ্ছা, আর কি কোশ্চেন ছিল? আমি কিছু কি মিস আউট করেছি? আচ্ছা, ইন্টারনাল ডিসপ্লেসমেন্ট, গভর্নমেন্ট কি করছে? তো ইন্টারনাল ডিসপ্লেসমেন্ট তখনই হয় যখন গভর্নমেন্ট ইজ নট ইন এ পজিশন টু কন্টেন দ্য ভায়োলেন্স which gives rise to internal displacement. And whether now, for example, in Kashmir, government of India last 30 years, all types of government, they have failed, because if the Kashmiri Pandits, they have to go back to their land, they need to have social security, they need to have social recognition of their neighbors. And if the bond actually has been snapped, now neither these Kashmiri Pandits, they are not that brave enough to try to go there. Government says that it is going to give them security, but will the government be able to do so? Because Kashmir has remained turbulent, one reason or the other. I don't want to get into that, why and so on. So therefore, it is also very much easy to see that it is not possible for government of the day to ensure security. Now, about the tribals in Kokrajhar in Assam, of course, they were given security and then they could go back. So many a times internal displacement situation arises in a small way. Internal displacement is not a very big problem here in our country. But then it has become a big problem only in relationship to violent, bloody conflict, especially in Africa and Asia. But in our country, we do have many situations of involuntary migration because of other man-made disasters, because of Sardar Sarovar Dam and so on. আচ্ছা শতাব্দী আরো কোনো কোশ্চেন কি বাকি থাকলো? আমি
স্যার আরো দুটো কোয়েশ্চেন পরে এসছে, মোটামুটি আপনার কভার আপ করাই। একটা এসছে উদ্বাস্তু সমস্যার ফলে আমাদের দেশের জনসংখ্যা বৃদ্ধি পাচ্ছে, এ বিষয়ে কি পদক্ষেপ নেওয়া উচিত। আরেকটি কোয়েশ্চেন আমাদের স্টুডেন্টদের থেকেই এসছে, সেকেন্ড সেমিস্টার, জবা মন্ডল অ্যান্ড প্রিয়াঙ্কা মন্ডল। what are the effects on the socio-economic and demography level of a host country because of the migration?
ওটা পরে বলছি, আমি প্রথমটা উত্তর করি। প্রথমটা উদ্বাস্তুরা বেশি পরিমাণে আসছে, তাই জন্য দেশের জনসংখ্যা বৃদ্ধি পাচ্ছে। উদ্বাস্তুরা তখনই আসবে যদি আর কি তারা আসতে বাধ্য হয়। তাহলে প্রত্যেকটা দেশ যেখান থেকে ভারতবর্ষে আসবে, সেই সমস্ত দেশে যদি প্লুরালিজম থাকে, পলিটিক্যাল স্টেবিলিটি থাকে, আর সেই সমস্ত দেশে যদি ধর্মনিরপেক্ষতা বজায় থাকে, তাহলে আসবে না। তো তার ফলে আমি অনেক বছর আগে বলেছিলাম, 21 বছর আগে বলেছিলাম, ইন্ডিয়া মাস্ট নট ওভার এমফেসাইজ হিস্ট্রি in relation to Bangladesh. Bangladesh must not forget geography in relationship to India. And it is in India's vested interest to have a developed and secular Bangladesh. Bangladesh যদি সেকুলার হয়, তো দ্যাট অ্যাকচুয়ালি বেনিফিটস ইন্ডিয়া। কিন্তু এখানে যদি মাইনরিটিসরা টর্মেন্টেড হয়, তা তখন সেখানেও মাইনরিটিসরা টর্মেন্টেড হবে, আর তখন তারা আসবে। কিন্তু বেশিরভাগ সময় বাংলাদেশে রিলিজিয়াস পারসিকিউশনের জন্য মানুষরা আসেনি। বাংলাদেশ থেকে যারা এসছে তারা পভার্টির জন্য এসছে, তারা হিন্দুরা এসছে। যখনই হিন্দুরা আসছে তখন আমরা বলছি যে রিলিজিয়াস পারসিকিউশনের জন্য আসছে, ওটা ভুল। নাকি যখন মুসলিমরা আসছে তখন আমরা তো বলতে পারছি না যে রিলিজিয়াস পারসিকিউশনের জন্য এসছে, পভার্টির জন্য এসছে। এবং আগামী দিনেও আসবে, আরো অনেক অনেক লক্ষ লক্ষ মানুষ আসবে। যদি বাংলাদেশ তোমার তুলনায় পুয়ার হয়, তোমার তুলনায় আন্ডার ডেভেলপড হয়, আর সেখানে যদি ফেমিন হয়, তাহলে বাংলাদেশের লোক আসবে। আর ঠিক উল্টোটা যদি হয়, বাংলাদেশ তোমার থেকে বেশি ডেভেলপড হচ্ছে, আর এখানে আর কি অবস্থাটা ভয়ঙ্কর ভয়াবহ হয়ে গেছে ইন্ডিয়ার কোথাও, তাহলে ইন্ডিয়া থেকে বাংলাদেশে যাবে। অর্থাৎ রিলেটিভ প্রসপ্যারিটির একটা প্রাইস দিতে হবে। আমেরিকা ভালো করছে, মেক্সিকো থেকে মানুষ যাবেই, যতই ওয়াল করা হোক না কেন। কিউবা থেকে লোকরা মানুষ পালিয়ে ওখানে যাবেই। তো যেখানে আর কি অসহ্য একটা অবস্থা হয়ে যাবে, সেখান থেকে মানুষ পালাবে। এবং তার ফলে কোথাও পপুলেশন বাড়বে, কোথাও পপুলেশন কিন্তু কমেও যেতে পারে। আবার যদি কোথাও পপুলেশন বেড়েছে, তো আবার কোথাও কমেও যাচ্ছে, তাই না? আচ্ছা, অন্য কোশ্চেনটা কি ছিল বুঝতে পারলাম না।
আরেকটা কোয়েশ্চেন ছিল স্যার, what are the effects on the socio-economic and demography of a host country because of the migration?
ঠিকই কথা। মাইসেলফ এন্ড ডক্টর মজুমদার আমরা একটা বই লিখেছিলাম অনেক আগে, ওটা বইটার নাম হচ্ছে দ্য এলসওয়্যার পিপল। এলসওয়্যার মানে কোথাকার মানুষ সেটা কেউ জানে না, ইন দ্য সেন্স যে কেউ চায় না রেফিউজিদেরকে। এলসওয়্যার অনেকটা নো ম্যানের মতোই। তো ওটা হচ্ছে যে হোস্ট কান্ট্রি, এটাকে বলি যে হোস্ট কান্ট্রি প্রেডিকামেন্ট। ইকোনমি ডিপ্রেসড হয়ে যায় যেখানে যদি প্রচুর পরিমাণ রেফিউজিরা যাবে, যেটা ত্রিপুরার এক্সাম্পল দিয়েছিলাম আমি। গভর্নমেন্টের পক্ষে দীর্ঘদিন ধরে ম্যানেজ করা সম্ভবপর হয় না, এটা যুদ্ধ, দিস অ্যাকচুয়ালি লিডস টু ওয়ার। তো তার ফলে কি হচ্ছে, যে একটা কান্ট্রি এর রেফিউজিরা কান্ট্রি বিতে যাচ্ছে, আবার কান্ট্রির বি রেফিউজিরা এতে যাচ্ছে, আবার কান্ট্রির এর রেফিউজি ডিসপ্লেসটা অনেকেই নিজের কান্ট্রিতে ডিসপ্লেসড হয়ে গেছে, এবং তার ফলে দেখা যাচ্ছে যে কোথাও আইডিপি ক্যাম্প, কোথাও রেফিউজি ক্যাম্প, এবং তাদের মধ্যে গন্ডগোল শুরু হচ্ছে। কারণ রেফিউজি ক্যাম্পের দেখভাল করার জন্য আন্তর্জাতিক স্তরে কিছু ব্যবস্থা রয়েছে, কিন্তু ইন্টারনাল ডিসপ্লেসমেন্টের কনটেক্সটে সেই ব্যবস্থা নেই। সেই ব্যবস্থাটা তৈরি করার চেষ্টা করা হচ্ছে, কিন্তু কেউ তাতে রাজি না, কেন কি সেটা সার্বভৌমত্বের উপর আর কি একটা প্রশ্ন চিহ্ন আনছে। তো তাই জন্য আমরা অনেকে কাজ করছি যাতে সার্বভৌমত্বের সঙ্গে এই এটাকে দূরে সরিয়ে রাখা হোক। তো সবাই মনে করে যে না, অন্যত্র কি হচ্ছে আমার দেখার দরকার নেই, আমার এখানে আমি কিছু করতে দেব না। তো সেটা যখন হবে তখন দেখা যাবে যে অনেক কিছু করা সম্ভবপর নয়। তার কারণটা হচ্ছে যে আপনার দেশে যদি ইন্টারনালি ডিসপ্লেসড পিপল হয়েছে, তার মানেটা হচ্ছে যে গভর্নমেন্ট হ্যাজ ফেইলড। গভর্নমেন্ট হ্যাজ ফেইলড। আচ্ছা, অনেক সময় গভর্নমেন্টই ইন্টারনালি ডিসপ্লেসড পিপল করাচ্ছে। গভর্নমেন্টের উপর যাদের কন্ট্রোল আছে তারা কাউকে মাইনরিটি চিহ্নিত করে দেওয়ার মধ্য দিয়ে, বা কাউকে দেশদ্রোহী চিহ্নিত করবার মধ্য দিয়ে, কাউকে গেরিলা বাহিনীর সদস্য বা চিহ্নিতকরণের মধ্য দিয়ে তারা আর কি এক ঘরে হয়ে যাচ্ছে। কেউ ইন্টারনালি, তাদের কেউ সেখানে হয়তো গেরিলা ওয়ারফেয়ার হচ্ছে, বা কোথাও আর কি হয়তো তোমার ব্যাটেল অফ সাকসেস হচ্ছে। তো এইখানে এখন অনেক রকম পদ্ধতি বের করা হয়েছে ইন্টারন্যাশনাল লেভেলে, এবং তার মুখ্য দিকটা হচ্ছে ফ্রান্সিস ডেইং, উনি সেক্রেটারি জেনারেলের রিপ্রেজেন্টেটিভ ছিলেন অন ইন্টারনালি ডিসপ্লেস পারসন। তো যখন এই ব্যাপারটা ইন্টারনালি ডিসপ্লেস পিপল আমরা আলোচনা করতে শুরু করলাম 90-এর দশকে, তখন অনেকে এটা মানতে রাজি না। গভর্নমেন্ট অফ ইন্ডিয়া তো মানবেই না, এখনো মানে না। তার কারণটা হচ্ছে যে এটার ফলে সভারেন্টিটা উপর প্রশ্ন চিহ্ন আসছে। কিন্তু এটাও ফ্যাক্ট যে অনেক কান্ট্রি বলছে যে আমরা তো সামাল দিতে পারছি না, কারণ আমরা গৃহযুদ্ধে চলছে। যেমন শ্রীলঙ্কান গভর্নমেন্ট, ওরা আইডিপি কে মেনে নেয়, ওরা আইডিপিদের জন্য সাহায্য সহযোগিতা বিদেশ থেকে নিয়েছে। অনেক কান্ট্রি বলে আরে না না না, কি বলছো, আমাদের এখানে এরকম কোনো সমস্যা নেই। লক্ষ লক্ষ আইডিপি আছে টার্কিতে, টার্কি অ্যাকসেপ্টই করে না। তো ইন্টারনালি ডিসপ্লেস পিপলের ব্যাপারে মানে মেনি এ টাইম দেখা যায় যে কান্ট্রিজ আর নট রেডি টু অ্যাকসেপ্ট ইট, এবং এই সমস্তর ফলে একটা আন্তর্জাতিক স্তরে নানাবিধ ব্যবস্থা হয়েছে। একটা ব্যবস্থার নাম হচ্ছে ওই তোমার ইন্টারনাল ডিসপ্লেসমেন্ট মনিটরিং করার জন্য, তাদেরকে হেল্প করার জন্য গাইডিং প্রিন্সিপাল বেরিয়েছে। এবং আজকে গোটা ওয়ার্ল্ডে একটা রাষ্ট্ররা অনেকটাই চুক্তিবদ্ধ হয়েছে যে 4 ধরনের সিচুয়েশন যখন হবে তখন ওই ইন্টারনাল সভারেন্টির দোহাই পারলে চলবে না। কি কি সিচুয়েশন? এথনিক ক্লিনজিং। এথনিক ক্লিনজিং হলে তখন তুমি এটা বলতে পারবে না যে আমি বিদেশ থেকে সাহায্য নেব না, বা বিদেশি সৈন্যরা আসবে না, এই সিচুয়েশন থেকে সামাল দেবে না, এটা চলবে না। এথনিক ক্লিনজিংটা একটা। এইরকম অনেকগুলি সিচুয়েশন আছে যেখানে এটা করাটা আর কি খুব দরকার, বিশেষ করে ইন্টারনাল কনফ্লিক্টের প্রশ্নে। তো এই কনটেক্সটে একটা হয়েছে যে সভারেন্টি আমরা বলতে কি বোঝাই, যে সভারেন্টি বলতে হচ্ছে কর্তৃত্ব, কিন্তু সভারেন্টির আর একটা অন্য দিকটা হচ্ছে দায়িত্ব। তো রাষ্ট্র ব্যবস্থা তারা দায়িত্ব পালন করবে না, কর্তৃত্বটাই দেখাবে। কিন্তু হিউম্যান রাইটস এর পার্সপেক্টিভে একজন ইন্টারনালি ডিসপ্লেস পার্সনের অবস্থা আর একজন রেফিউজির অবস্থা কিন্তু একই। তো তাই জন্য ইন্টারন্যাশনাল লেভেলে আইডিপিরা তারা সাপোর্ট পাবে, অনেক দেশে তারা পায়, অনেক দেশ এটাকে অস্বীকার করে। হ্যাঁ, অনেকটাই হলো তো। It was quite substantive. I suppose I also got tired. I'm having this, ওই নাক থেকে জল পড়ছে, তাই জন্য আমি আর কন্টিনিউ করতে চাইবো না। টাইমও হয়তো হয়ে গেছে। তোমরা কিছু ধন্যবাদ দিতে চাইলে দাও।
Thank you very much, sir. In spite you are not well, you have continued the session. For that, very much thank you, sir. And thank you, Shatabdi and Komalika, for conducting this session so smoothly and nicely. Now it's a time to formally end the session with vote of thanks, which will be given by Dr. Mohar Chakraborty. Over to you, Mohar.
Thank you, Namrata. On behalf of the Department of Political Science, South Calcutta Girls College, I take this opportunity to propose this vote of thanks. No word would be adequate to acknowledge our gratitude to our respected and eminent speaker, Professor Dr. Om Prakash Mishra, Professor, Department of International Relations, Jadavpur University, for accepting our invitation and delivering this incisive and insightful lecture on forced migration in international relations, despite his extremely pressing schedule and ill health today. Our most sincere thanks are offered to the President of the governing body, Sri Subrata Mukherjee, Honorable MLA and Minister in charge, Panchayats and Rural Development, Government of West Bengal, for his constant support and guidance in all our academic endeavour. Our most sincere thanks are offered to Professor Shibranjan Chatterjee, Honorable Member of the governing body, South Calcutta Girls College, for gracing the occasion and enlightening us with his keynote address. Our most sincere thanks are due to Professor Moitri Bhattacharya, Honorable Member, Governing Body, South Calcutta Girls College, for gracing the occasion and enlightening us with her address. Our sincere gratitude to Principal Madam, Professor Apurna De, for her welcome address and for encouraging and guiding us in organizing this program and also for facilitating a wider outreach through YouTube live stream. Our gratitude is due to Dr. Rehana Khatun, Coordinator, IQAC, and Associate Professor in Philosophy for her constant guidance and support. We sincerely acknowledge the overwhelming response and active participation of our distinguished audience today, teachers from our college and various other colleges and institutions, research scholars and students, and especially for your thought-provoking questions. Our thanks are due to Dr. Shintu Kumar De, our colleague from the Department of Botany, for providing his prompt and wholehearted support in preparing the e-certificates. Last but not the least, I would like to thank my departmental colleagues for working round the clock towards organizing this program and making it a huge success. Thank you, good evening, and stay safe.
Okay, bye.
Thank you all from our institute, South Calcutta Girls College, and from my department for their hard work all through. Thank you very much all. And thank you very much, sir, to you and our GV members especially. And thank you, sir, because of you, we all have gathered here and we have got this opportunity to meet virtually. Thank you, sir. Can we end now? Stop recording.
আমি রেকর্ডিং স্টপ করলাম, হয়ে গেল তো।
হয়ে গেছে ঠিকঠাক সব?
হ্যাঁ, রেকর্ডিং তো হয়েছে।
প্রিন্সিপাল ম্যাম আছেন না বেরিয়ে গেছে? আচ্ছা, ইউটিউবে লাইভ চলছে এখন।
আচ্ছা,
ঠিক আছে, তো উইল এন্ড হিয়ার, কেন ইউটিউবে লাইভ চলছে। ঠিক আছে, ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ অল অফ ইউ। থ্যাংক ইউ।
থ্যাংক ইউ।